This is Atomic Shinobi, and today I'm going to narrate second and final part of What If Immortal Naruto Humiliated Erza Scarlet. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. While wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Monday, August 23rd, X784 Naruto awoke long before the sun rose on the new day. He slipped out of bed and began an intense training regimen because he needed to get back to his best fighting form. He warmed up by performing some light calisthenics and applying his entire body weight to his limbs using Fuinjutsu. Shite Kankan Fuin. He had witnessed the effects of going soft on the elderly man. He didn't want to experience that. Nevertheless, the person who created that Fuinjutsu had a very morbid sense of name choice. After finishing his calisthenics in a matter of minutes, he started the exercise regimen he had first outlined in the gloomiest days of the Fourth Great Ninja War. He didn't realize he was being watched because he was too busy hoisting two huge rocks above his head. He tried to push himself during his training by using the rocks as weights. He had to begin with his out of practice body before moving on to his chakra training, even though he knew that he could easily destroy anyone using his Sage mode. After wiping his hands, he opened a pair of metal rods and grinned as he thought of his longtime friend Rock Lee. During that bodyguard mission to defend Hikaru, the Crown Prince of Moon Country, and his father, King Michiru, from those three renegade ninjas so long ago, the bushy-browed martial arts fiend had first made them public. As he turned on the weight and resistance seals etched on the metal rods, he forced the unpleasant memories away. Just before they abruptly fell from his grasp and hit the ground, the two batons glowed light blue as they absorbed his chakra. A rather large crater was soon revealed after a loud bang caused a lot of dust to fly. Both the display and Naruto's struggle to lift the now extremely heavy rods while cursing left his three observers in disbelief. Sweat started to trickle down his brow, and his muscles swelled from the sheer strain of trying to move the rods into position. He wiped his forehead and grimaced, letting them drop to the floor once more. Shit, he cursed angrily. I'm so soft now that I can't even grab these things without using chakra. That bastard Sasuke, he'd be laughing his ass off if he saw me like this. To think, this is only the first level, his ramblings weren't overlooked. Together, his three spies were shocked by this announcement. He picked up the rods once more and twirled them in his hand as if they were batons, his muscles still strained despite the chakra infusion. After 10 minutes of training, his motions were even more fluid, elegant, and swift than before. The metallic rods became even heavier as the pace increased and another chakra infusion was performed. On the other hand, he began to swing more quickly. As the combat batons swept through the air, they flew so fast that violent blows left behind strong wind gusts. Erza Scarlet was shocked by Naruto's demonstration of extreme physical prowess as the vacuum blasts tore up pieces of ground and stripped bark from trees. He was more powerful than this. It dawned on her late. She recalled all the times he had sliced through her armor without causing her any harm. Has he been suppressing his emotions all along? Naruto, how strong are you? Before long, Naruto was so sweaty that his white shirt was clinging to him and showing off his toned torso. Without hesitation, he stripped the wet garment off, but then he heard a low sigh coming from the bushes. He swiftly swept an evaluating glance across the clearing as his Chobuku Rinnegan came to life. When he splashed water on his face to cover up his actions, he saw three chakra signals where none should have been present. He turned straight to where his three stalkers had taken refuge after he had finished rehydrating. See something you like, ladies? He said, his smile a bit too big. His three tails landed in a heap on top of one another after he let out a loud squeal of fear that caused the bush to shake itself rather violently. The fact that Erza, Lucy, and Mirajane had followed him didn't surprise Naruto for some reason. The fact that they were still in their pajamas was unexpected. Erza, dressed in a pink Heart Cruise pajama set, was at the bottom of the stack. Lucy was lying on Erza's back, wearing pink sleeping shorts and a white t-shirt with the Heart Cruise logo in sky blue. Last but not least was Mirajane, dressed in a pale camisole and red leggings, who had performed a belly flop on Lucy. Naruto walked up to the group of girls and laughed. I'm not one to turn down a good show, but are you three just going to lie there all morning? He joked, squatting down to look them in the eyes. As they started to climb off one another, the girls were polite enough to blush a little at his taunting. However, they paused to gaze at him, attempting to commit his appearance to memory. But now that he had no shirt on, they noticed a big scar across his chest. About the size of a fist, the faded blemish had come within an inch of his heart. They had been fascinated by the only obvious flaw in his body, regardless of how Naruto had survived an injury that would have killed anyone else. Erza's directness caused her to ask, "Naruto, how did you get such a ghastly-looking scar?" after they were all on their feet. As he ran his fingers over the discolored skin of the scar, the blonde Jinchuriki gazed down at the fist-sized pockmark. He said, "Oh, this old thing?" Although he sounded casual, his eyes were clouded by unwelcome nostalgia and old grudges. "It's little more than an old and unwanted memento of my past." The girls were taken aback by his sudden change in attitude and chose not to press the issue. "Hey, no need for all these long and gloomy faces. Go get ready for breakfast while I take a shower, eh?" he exclaimed, grinning widely as he took in the atmosphere. They returned to their room after nodding. When Naruto saw an opportunity he couldn't ignore, his perverted nature took over. The foolish old fart would have been pleased with him for his next move if Sennin had seen him. With a twisted grin, he swiftly grabbed a random buttock from each of the three of them and gave it a forceful slap. He vanished before the red-faced girls could turn against him in rage, before they had even noticed his impetuous act of perversion. After taking a shower a few minutes later, Naruto hurriedly changed into his clothes and went to the dining room. Erza, Lucy, and Mirajane were staring at him, which startled him. To his amusement, however, the noticeable flush on each of their faces counterbalanced their anger. Despite himself, he laughed. "Beautiful girls shouldn't scowl," he suggested in a light-hearted manner. He clarified, bad wrinkles would ruin those lovely faces, in response to their perplexed looks. The three girls turned their heads away, blushing wildly at the candid praise. Gray was taken aback. Both Erza and Mirajane had a history of ignoring or assaulting anyone who even attempted to flirt with them. Natsu didn't pay attention to his teammates' interactions because he was too busy arguing with Happy about what breakfast should be. Elfman was shocked by what his older sister had done. She was acting in a way he had never seen her do before. She could flirt like no one else, of course, but she wasn't interested in most things. Smirking at her young master's twisted and flirtatious actions, Maya had prepared pancakes with bacon and eggs on the side. The otherwise uneventful breakfast was over in a flash. Together, the seven of them laughed at various jokes and discussed everyday topics as they left Naruto's estate. When they arrived at the guild, Makarov Drayar, their master, welcomed them. With his eyebrows waving, he slyly inquired, "So, how was the sleepover at Naruto's house?" Natsu exclaimed, "It was awesome, old man. Naruto-san had these gigantic fox golems protecting his home and they were really cool." Happy went on, It was a gigantic fox, too." "Really, now?" asked Makarov, the elderly man. One of the townspeople ran up to them just as Natsu was about to continue his story. In order to catch his breath, said person had to stop and rest his hands on his thighs. Fairy Tail's elderly master demanded, "What's troubling you so much that you had to run all the way here?" As someone handed him a bottle of water, the villager gasped, Magnolia Southgate Park. "Something's happened. You need to see this." The hairs on the back of Makarov's neck stood on end in alarm. "Let's go," he said, turning back to his subordinates, and then he started running. His age soon overtook him, even though his kids were following in his footsteps. His lungs felt like they were on fire, and the effort burned through his legs. He decided to open his mouth and tell them to continue, wheezing as he started to slow down. To his astonishment, though, he was lifted up by powerful hands and placed on powerful shoulders. Naruto had made the decision to take charge and assist him in preserving some of his magical abilities. The short old man saw that Naruto was ahead even as he straightened out. Gray and Natsu were right behind him, with Erza and Mirajane on either side. Lucy was easily able to keep up with the others while staying at the back thanks to Elfman's ability to scoop her up and have her straddling his shoulders. Happy, who somehow managed to keep up with them, was not far behind. However, they all exuded a grim determination that, had it not come at such an uncomfortable moment, would have greatly boosted guild morale. For the remainder of the journey, he remained silent, relying on Erza and Mirajane to provide precise instructions. A sizable crowd had gathered around Magnolia's Southgate Park's centerpiece, the enormous tree in the park square, by the time they arrived. Nothing positive was implied by the speculative murmurs, which were punctuated by astonished cries and terrified muttering. To get to the front of the crowd, the 7 of them didn't have to struggle. The crowd split on both sides, creating an open road that led all the way up to the enormous tree between Makarov's strength and Erza's reputation. Naruto merely scowled as his teammates and guild master gasped in shock and surprise. Team Shadow Gear from Fairy Tail had been crucified on the tree after being beaten to a bloody pulp. Natsu's anger was symbolized by his narrowed eyes as fire burst into being. His eyes focused on the Phantom Lord symbol branded on Levi's stomach, and his spiky pink hair flared into harder spikes. Naruto's scowl became more intense. Even though he might have appeared slightly agitated, his intent to kill was evident to everyone in his vicinity. Then, like a tidal wave crashing over them, a sudden, cold, and dark surge of pure bloodlust exploded into existence. Everyone there blinked as they watched their lives flash before them and died in agony that could only be relieved by. But after taking a single deep breath, Naruto's terrible bloodlust and unadulterated malevolence vanished into thin air. Even in the shadow of his spiky bangs, his eyes remained hard despite his seemingly serene demeanor. Makarov, for his part, was clearly shocked. He was gasping at the utter humiliation of such a bold act intended to elicit unwelcome behavior from him. Yes, indeed. It was provocation. Phantom Lord had not been subtle at all. They targeted his children after throwing iron spears into the guild hall first. Not acceptable. Erza called to him as he looked up at the spot where Levi, Jet, and Droy were still dangling from their chains. Master. Under the full force of his righteous rage, the old man's magic burst into existence. I like the fact that our guild sometimes becomes a rundown beer hall. I can tolerate spears being thrown at our home, but no parent can stand idle while the blood of his children is on the line. He yelled. His magic was so strong that it actually destroyed his magic staff and shook everyone in its path with its golden, white light. His subordinates had to cover their faces as strong winds blew in all directions, kicking up dust and sending tiny rocks flying everywhere. "This means war," exclaimed Makarov Drayar, too furious to do anything. Despite his frown, Naruto nodded. A brief hand gesture later caused 4 Kage Bunshin to emerge after disappearing in Shunshin no Jutsu. As his Kage Bunshin grabbed their lifeless bodies and leapt to the ground, the original swiftly cut Team Shadow Gear by wrapping a wind blade around 2 of his fingers. Lucy stopped him and his Kage Bunshin in their tracks just as he was ready to take them to the hospital. "What's wrong, Lucy?" he inquired, seeming aloof toward her given his fellow guild members' injuries. "Can this wait until I get these 3 to the hospital?" She winced once more, but not out of fear. She did feel a tiny bit of attraction to him because of his assertive and icy demeanor. No, she was deceiving herself. She couldn't trust her voice because she was so afraid. "Naruto-san, could you take me to the hospital, too? I'd like to stay with Levi-chan," she said instead. He added another Kage Bunshin to the group by nodding. She blushed after being swept off her feet and slung up in a bridal carry. Knowing their orders, the Kage Bunshin all sped off without a word. "Master," Naruto said to Makarov, "since this is obviously a trap designed to lure us into a war that we might not be prepared for, I'd like to discuss the terms of our preemptive assault with you if you don't mind." The old man, still furious, yelled, "Why would I do that, Naruto?" Naruto let out a sigh. "I've told you about me before, remember? Back home, I used to be something of a battlefield general." His casual statement caught Erza and Mirajane off guard, and they turned to look at the Jinchuriki. Although they were aware of his many hidden depths, Naruto's status as a soldier just out of combat seemed so strange. But if that wasn't enough, he was also a general in the military. How could a man be affected in this way by magic? Beyond that, I'm still a soldier who fought in an actual war, the platinum blonde added. If only by default, I have the most experience with matters of actual warfare. Makarov attempted to protest, but Naruto's gentle frown grew more intense. In that vein, he said to the elderly gentleman, "I'm asking for this meeting in order to establish a battle plan and other contingencies. That way, if anything happens to you and or the others, I'll know what to do in order to prevent any more casualties on our side." The old guild master gave in to one of his most influential subordinates with a sigh. Okay. Fine, Naruto. You'll help with the war effort, but I have one condition." Despite his own curiosity, the blonde Jinchuriki nodded. "Please, Please remember the rules of our guild. Don't kill them." Though he nodded curtly, Naruto snarled at what he saw as Makarov's narrow-minded idealism. It had been a long time since he had allowed himself to consider the possibility of mercy in combat. But could such sentiments really make him angry? He had read in Era that peace had long existed in the land of fury. For historians and academics to study, serious warfare was the stuff of history books. These days, even conflicts between legal guilds were rare. Are his rules of war applicable in this situation? Could he afford to have a different opinion? When he finally said, "Fine," his voice was tight with disapproval. "In return, I want you to control yourself and stay away from the battlefield. I won't disappoint you otherwise." He popped his neck abruptly. Naruto disappeared in Hiraishin no Jutsu, leaving Makarov by himself with Erza and the others. "If you'll excuse me, Master, I'll have to finalize our battle plan." The elderly man let out a sigh. He complained, "That boy's going to be trouble one day." He then turned to Erza and said, "Well, you heard him. Let the whole guild know that we're going to war. We'll listen to his plan, and you'll be his second-in command. Understood?" Unconfident in her ability to speak, she nodded. Unexpectedly, Naruto had shown another side of himself. A man who had witnessed the atrocities of war. He had even led troops into combat, where he witnessed them kill or be killed. How come he refused to speak to her? To whom? An hour later, Master Makarov, Erza, and Naruto gathered at a table in the guild hall's basement to talk about the specifics of the impending conflict. He lectured, "When you want to win a fight, you need to have a cool head. We won't beat Phantom Lord if we attack them now," all furious about this whole situation. "The best thing we can do is to start combat preparations all throughout the morning and then attacking them just after high noon. That way, the enemy won't be expecting our assault." He popped his knuckles and sighed. Even though strategy says that no plan survives first contact with the enemy, our casualties should be minimal. If they eat lunch, they'll be digesting and will be caught off guard. If they don't eat, then their hunger should be able to weaken them. Erza was taken aback by Naruto's capacity for strategy. His strategy focused on reducing casualties, moving covertly, and appearing to be the simplest way to win. It may have been a cowardly strategy, but the most practical way to fight was always to surprise the enemy. Thus, a soldier's heart and soul pounded fiercely within his chest. Makarov was surprised by Naruto's strategic thinking. Everything suggested that his youngest son had come up with his plan on the spot, which was quite an accomplishment. He also understood what Naruto had not mentioned. There was a good chance that at least one person would die in the conflict if they could surprise their adversary. From what we know of our enemy, the Phantom Lord Guild has a large number of branches all across Fury. Which one do you think is the main one, Master? The elderly man shrugged and said, "Well, their main branch is in Oaktown. I know that much." He continued, "I never really talked to Phantom Lord's master, you see," to the disbelieving expressions of Erza and Naruto. Erza sighed and said, "That's good to know, nonetheless. But what do we do about the other branches? We all know that Phantom Lord outnumbers us 3.to.1. They might attack our guild while we go to attack theirs. In that vein, then, Master, can you order one of our S-class members to attack and destroy Phantom Lord's branch establishments, just to make sure?" replied Naruto. "Easily," Makarov said with a nod, "but I think that I'll ask Mistogan to do it. Laxus and his team are on an S-class quest and Guildarts is still on that 100-year quest." Then Naruto faced Erza. "Do you have an idea who their strongest mages are, Erza-chan?" Despite her reddening at his familiarity, she nodded. Under the master, Jose Porla, are 5 S-class mages by Phantom Lord's standards. The strongest of them is Kurigane, Gajeel Red Fox. He's a dragon slayer, like Natsu, but for a different type of dragon. His Tetsu no Metsuryu Maho, or Iron Dragon Slayer magic, means that metal weapons are useless on him. Erza went on, "After him are the Elemental 4. The blonde flinched at this claim, but only Makarov saw it. Wait, let me guess," Naruto's voice cut her off. "Each of them are proficient with one of the 4 main elements: earth, air, fire, and water. These are the balanced, yet conflicting, elements of the world and allow for a great deal of power available to each of these people." Erza's keen intuition caught him off guard. Even though she didn't get his sarcasm, she tried to ignore her emotions and carried on with her briefing. Naruto's eyes narrowed in calculation as he said, "First is Great Sky, Arya, a very skilled user of airspace magic." Given that this Arya character sounded like a futon master, dealing with such a man might require him to use his Kaden Jutsu. Next up is Rain Woman Juvialoxer. She's very skilled with water magic, to the point where she can actually convert her body into water in order to avoid physical and even certain magical attacks. This immediately piqued his interest. He had to change their strategy right away if this Juvia had abilities comparable to those of that obnoxious jerk Hizuka Suigetsu. Naruto said, "Third up is Totemaru the Conflagration. He's obviously a powerful fire magic user of some kind." Naruto had nothing to say about a man who was given such a vague moniker. Finally, Naruto had to ponder what kind of unique trick this character employed. Last but not least is Sol of the Land. He uses earth magic and supposedly uses sand magic as well. Naruto gave a thoughtful nod, finally taking in Erza's information about their adversary. He then grinned and raised his deep blue eyes to her, causing her to blush under his soul-piercing stare and feel a little self-conscious. That was before his large mouth ruined the moment. "Hey, how do you know all this, Benihime-chan? Do you have a crush on someone in that guild or something?" Erza sputtered, her right eyebrow twitching violently, her face flushed with indignation. The idea that she would have feelings for someone in Phantom Lord was even more ridiculous than the question itself, and she was barely able to control her rage. Makarov was guffawing aloud and could hardly contain himself. He was aware of Naruto's actions. She was unable to react to him out of the blue because she was unsure of the precise nature of her feelings for him. Even though Erza wouldn't publicly acknowledge it, he was happy that the young shinobi had joined his guild. But when Naruto turned to face him, his cheerful disposition soured. "Master, I think that you should stay at the guild while we handle the front lines. As our leader, you're the most important part of our efforts. Please stay behind and command the troops. If anything were to happen to you, morale would plummet and we'd lose the momentum of our attack." Erza added, glaring at Naruto for a moment. "He's right, Master," she said. "You're our master, our father, and our symbol of strength. If something were to happen to you during the battle, we'll automatically lose." The way two of his children had banded together against him caused the old man to grimace. He knew they were correct, regardless of how he tried to refute it. After all, Jose was a strong wizard and another wizard saint. Jose would have no qualms about employing dishonest tactics to achieve his goals. With a sigh, he complied with their requests. He snorted, "All right, you damn nosy brats. At that, I'll do as you ask, and stay back to defend the guild while you go attack Phantom Lord's headquarters. But I do have one condition." "Which is?" asked Naruto. "You two are the only S-class mages that we have right now, which means that you're the only ones who can fight Jose if he's there." He gave them a serious lecture. "So you have an extra responsibility. Make sure that none of the other brats fight him, understood?" His eyes dipped into nostalgia as they nodded. "Plus I get to be with Mira-chan all day," he thought, laughing in a perverse and oddly familiar way. Naruto broke out in a sweat. Will the master behave in this manner? It's frightening how much he resembles Ero, Sennin and the old man. Erza had paid no attention to Makarov at all, too preoccupied with her own thoughts to hear his wise counsel. Fantastic. I can now watch Naruto-kun fight at his peak. He never uses all of his strength in a fight. It's almost as though he's scared to reveal them or something. Naruto finally jolted her out of her reverie with the words, "Nevertheless, I think that Jose of Phantom Lord is up to something, however. We really should talk more, Benihime-chan. Looks like Master won't be talking again anytime soon." Makarov was left alone with his pleasant thoughts and fantasies after she nodded and followed him out of the guild's impromptu briefing room. Magnolia Hospital, X784. Tuesday, August 24th. Lucy Hartfilia was standing at the base of the beds belonging to Team Shadow Gear. She quickly became friends with them after Levi McGarden, the small, blue-haired group's sole female member, shared her passion for reading and learning. Her first female friend of the same age was Levi. Lucy had a unique bond with her. She even recalled their initial encounter. Flashback starts. Levi sat next to Lucy and said, "Lu-chan, I heard something interesting about you. You're writing a novel, aren't you?" When a blue-winged cat sneezed on his pink-haired companion, Lucy said, "Yuwa, so it got out and I think I know who might have opened their large mouth, infuriating him and igniting another argument in the guild. My name is Levi McGarden and I'm 17 years old, just like you, Lu Chan. Also this is Jet and Droy. We're in the same team called Shadow Gear. As his friend Droy gushed about Lucy, saying, "Oh she's so cute," Jet exclaimed, "Yo." The small brunette mage asked, "I love to read, but I am terrible at writing. Would it be okay if I read your novel sometime?" Lucy, who is not accustomed to being the center of attention, said timidly, "No, it's not something I can show people yet." "What are you talking about? Isn't the purpose of a novel to read by the public? Also what's the point in writing one if you aren't going to show anyone?" replied the speed mage. According to Droy, as they say, being a novelist is like exposing your bare butt in public. His words caused Lucy to flush, and she covered her derriere with her hands. "Show me. Please show me," Levi exclaimed. "Not your butt, I mean." It's not done yet," the celestial spirit mage expressed. With hope, Levi said, "Then, when you do finish writing it, please let me be the first to read it." She could only say, "Oh, okay," before the brunette yelled, "Yay, it's a promise then." Flashback end. With a feeble smile, the celestial spirit mage reminisced about her initial encounter with Team Shadow Gear. They had succeeded in getting her to promise to read her book before anybody else, and they had cheered so enthusiastically that she had become enamored with them despite herself. Now, some of her new pals had suffered injuries. Lucy's eyes started to well up with tears at this humiliation her new family had to endure. "I can never forgive them, you guys. Teach Phantom Lord a lesson that they'll never forget." As soon as visiting hours ended, she left the hospital and quickly returned to the guild hall. Sadly, or fortunately, depending on your point of view, the guild was deserted for her. The rest of the guild had gone to battle Phantom Lord, so Mirajane was the only one present. Lucy was saddened by Mirajane's depression, particularly because Levi and her teammates were still in the hospital. In order to keep herself occupied and to stop feeling so worthless, she made the decision to go grocery shopping. In any case, she wanted to tend to her injured friends. It had begun to rain by the time she had completed her shopping. With a weary sigh, she was about to bolt for cover from the storm when she saw a figure approaching. Who would be out in the weather at this time, the celestial spirit mage wondered? Steadily and silently, Juvia is the rain woman, after all. Lucy raised her hackles in surprise at this odd woman and scowled a little. She was a slim young woman of her age who went by the name Juvia. Dark blue eyes, pale skin, a rather curvaceous figure hidden beneath a knee. Length double breasted coat with fur, lined cuffs and a furry collar, and blue hair curled up into tight rolls hanging at the base of her neck beneath a dark brown fur hat with a gold butterfly pin. She had a Teru bozu affixed to her coat for some reason. "Who are you?" Juvia asked as Lucy walked by her. "Who are you?" Lucy shot back, caught off guard. Disregarding her inquiry, Juvia unfurled a pink umbrella. Steadily and silently, the water mage with the blue hair said again, "It was a pleasure. Fare thee well." Lucy lost her temper a bit because the majority of her guild friends could be surprisingly slow-witted. She insisted, what was that all about?" Then she heard a strange male voice repeatedly saying the word, "Non," around her. Behind Lucy, a strange creature appeared as if he were growing out of the earth, and it soon became clear that he was the cause of the repetition. He was a slender man of average height, with green hair set in upward spikes from the back of his head and a pencil thin mustache. He had a monocle on a thin chain that obscured his right eye. Considering that he was dressed in a brownish suit with a tattered collar that had 3 noticeable protrusions sticking outward on either side, his sense of style was as strange as his face. His shoes and tie were simple and unremarkable, but he had a peculiar sense of personal style thanks to the short opera cape that was tied to both of his elbows. He said, "Bonjour," with non in a 3.3.7 rhythm, out loud, bowing briefly to Lucy. He turned to face Juvia and continued, saying, "Juvia Sama, you mustn't abandon your job now." The blonde celestial spirit mage exclaimed, "Another weirdo?" upon seeing the odd green-haired man. Juvia said, "Monsieur Saul," and nodded. Suddenly showing up at Juvia's side, the strange man said, "My monocle. It whispers to me, and it tells me that this mademoiselle is our beloved Cybele." The water mage with the blue hair said, "Oh my, so it was this girl?" Before realizing that she was their target, Lucy was taken by surprise. The man in the orange suit bowed to her once more and said, "Pardon my lack of manners, my name is Saul, one of the Element Four. But people call me Saul of the Land, and you may call me Monsieur Saul." With her fingers hovering over the key ring that hung from her waist, the blonde girl demanded, "So you're from Phantom Lord?" "Correct," cried Saul, his body actually wriggling in place like a patch of blighted grass blown by the wind. "Both of us have come to collect you for the great Phantom Lord. And she is the Rain Woman of the Element 4. Allow me to introduce Juvia of the Sea," he continued, gesturing to his partner. Lucy frowned. Juvia surrounded her body with a big watery ball before she could reach for one of her celestial spirit keys. "You're the ones that attacked Levi Chan," she exclaimed. "Non, non, non," Saul yelled angrily, stamping his foot as if he were truly going to have a fit. "With these 3 non, I will correct your mistake. Destroying your guild and attacking Levi Sama was all the work of Gajil Sama." Then, abruptly reflective, he trailed off. While adjusting his mustache, he acknowledged, "Well, it's true that all of us in the guild were for the idea, however." Lucy squirmed in her fluid-filled cage. She yelled, "What is this?" as carbon dioxide bubbles escaped her mouth. "Let me go." Juvia's waterlock cannot be broken. Lucy's vision was filled with dancing spots. In a fruitless struggle for breath, her lungs burned. She knew nothing else as the darkness engulfed her. As Lucy's unconscious body hit the floor, the waterlock exploded with a loud splash. "Juvia will not harm you, Lucy Heartfilia. Target acquired." Reaching down, Saul placed the unconscious celestial spirit mage in a fireman's carry over his shoulder. The only evidence of the 3 of them was Lucy's celestial spirit keys, which appeared to be swallowed by the ground. At the same time, Phantom Lord was hosting a massive party at their headquarters in Oaktown. The food was being eaten as fast as it could be laid out, the beer was flowing freely, and there was loud laughter. Occasionally, a fight would break out, but it soon died down due to the overall mood. "Da ha ha ha!" cackled one of Phantom Lord's unimpressive members, holding a half-eaten drumstick. "Did you see what Gajil did to those fairy shits?" With a half-empty tureen swinging wildly in a red face from near intoxication, another one yelled, "Those fairies got their asses burned really bad," to roaring laughter. "That's not all I heard. Apparently, Gajil attacked 3 of their members only last night," said a fat, unremarkable man as he took a long cigar out of his mouth. "By the way," the initial individual continued, "do any of you know who we're not supposed to hurt or touch? Master told you guys earlier while I was sleeping." "Oh, that person," said a snarky man at another table. "I don't know, actually. Master just told us to stay away, or something like that." The first man poured himself a beer, sat down, and shrugged. He lifted his tureen and sneered, "Ah, whatever. Here's to those pathetic fairies. I'll bet that they're trembling in their boots right now, with their tails between their legs," he added, to the cheers of his neighbor. The front door was suddenly leveled by a huge explosion, which also sent a number of people flying across the banquet hall. A recognizable mop of spiky bright pink hair and an all-2 familiar and terrible mark were the first things anyone saw after the smoke and dust had cleared. Standing at the head of an army of irate faces from Fairy Tail, their most dreaded foe, was Natsu Dragneel. There was an unsettling pause in which the stunned Phantom Lord mages gazed at their assailants for a moment before Natsu roared into the battle. The fight began as his friends quickly followed. Despite being outnumbered 2-1, Fairy Tail's forces more than made up for their numerical disadvantage with their legendary rage. When 5 mages simultaneously attacked Natsu, Yokugeki's swift Karyu no produced a lashing explosion that sent the peons flying. With his usual arrogance, he roared, "Anyone will do. Bring it on." A few more mages charged at him, but a swift Karyu no Tekken threw them back into their fellows and set them on fire. Erza was having a good time. All who threw themselves at her were wiped out by her swordsmanship and superhuman strength. She was cutting through their ranks like a scythe through wheat, but she wasn't exactly showing mercy. Vacuum blades created by a single sword strike would tear up everything in their path, sending mages flying in all directions. Some even threw their teammates over like tenpins after colliding with them. In the meantime, Naruto was advancing like a god of war across the battlefield. Before being struck with overwhelming concussive force, no one in Phantom Lord could see anything more than a flash of yellow. Since everything else in his arsenal was intended for death and destruction and wasn't exactly well received in Fury, he had limited himself to taijutsu. The few mages who did manage to approach him and attempt to strike him were instantly immobilized by his desire to kill and even passed out on their own. The ranks of Phantom Lord were frightened. The infamous Titania and the nimble Demon King were leading the assault, and the timing of Fairy Tail's attack couldn't have been worse. These two were impossible for anyone to touch, let alone actually attack. Despite holding themselves back, the two of them were using superhuman strength to knock out their opponents in record-breaking single blows. Erza was planning her attacks with Naruto even as she kept ruthlessly dispatching her opponents. The two of them were using vicious improvised combo attacks to take down mages left and right, with her switching up her weapons and fighting techniques on the fly. Using Ice Make. Spray to freeze enemies in their tracks and Ice Make. Lance to blast those behind him. Gray created a forest of icy spears that pierced calves, thighs, and even feet, causing various enemy mages to scream in agony. Using his ring magic, Loke was hurling twisters and tornadoes at anyone who dared to attack his guild. He was doing a lot of damage, from the debris that battered everything else to the sweeping dust plumes that blasted everything within reach. Solidified Violet Flame wrapped up a dozen enemy mages in a single deployment of Wakaba Mind's smoke magic. Smoke Crush and Macau Convolt's Purple Flare. Purple Net. A doubly effective combination attack. Just prior to the Phantom Lord rank and File being beaten into unconsciousness by fists made of bodily smoke. Alzak Connell, the guild's resident gunslinger, used his gun's magic to electrocute everyone he struck and knock out many of them with lightning bursts. With a sigh, he opened his weapon's loading chamber to reload it. Without Fairy Tail's resident sniper, his partner Bisca Mulan, and her own gun type Konso magic, he would have been caught off guard by a shrewd Phantom Lord mage brandishing a club. Even Happy, Natsu's flying cat, was engaged in combat, using his stubby little paws to swat Phantom Lord mages around. Makarov was attacked by several of Phantom Lord's mages who misjudged him due to his advanced age, displaying Darwinistic stupidity. Before he could crush anyone who attacked him, he grew so large that his head almost touched the ceiling of the room. A victim of his cried out, "He's a monster." Makarov's voice shook the ceiling as he yelled, "You laid your hands on this monster's children. Don't think any human laws will protect you." While still engaged in combat, Naruto was looking around the battlefield when he abruptly realized that none of the Elemental Four were present. He couldn't understand. In such an attack, why wouldn't Phantom Lord want to use its aces? However, he did see the same mage who had attacked Team Shadow Gear, and all of a sudden, the thought of having to crush some random thug's nose made him stop asking questions. Makarov's ability to use only magic to clear a path for himself is evidence of his immense strength. "Erza, you and Naruto are responsible for the fight here. I'll go face Jose and finish this," he shouted into the fray, remembering his kids. After saying his piece, he ascended to the point where he could sense his fellow wizard saint. The two of them shouted their affirmatives back to him, but he didn't stay long enough to hear it. He was so furious that everything in his path was smashed apart by his magic, which swung out like whips. Every step appeared to trigger a fresh earthquake, frightening the members of Phantom Lord to their core and energizing Fairy Tail's army to fight even harder against their master's fury. He stomped toward Jose Porla, the master of Phantom Lord, his magic energy soaring to unfathomable heights. Phantom Lord's logo was crushed by a shadow that fell upon it as soon as the third master of Fairy Tail left the battlefield, creating a huge dust and debris cloud. The figure was instantly recognizable to Naruto, who recognized his unique energy signature as being the same as the metal pillars that had destroyed their guild hall. With Shunshin no Jutsu, he appeared behind Erza and said, "Hey, Benihime-chan, that Gajeel guy just showed up. I'll take him on, you manage the battle." She scowled a little as she waited for the dust cloud to dissipate. She recognized the figure coming out of the fading cloud of dust, and her eyes grew wide. Iron Dragon Slayer, Kurigane Gajeel, that could only be him. Gajeel Red Fox was a formidable presence. A tall, muscular young man, Gajeel has long, spiky black hair that he keeps slicked back to show off his forehead. His dark pupils were slitted, his eyes were red, and his eyebrows were hidden. His canine teeth are significantly longer and more shaped than usual, which is evidence that he is a dragon slayer. Simple round studs cover the majority of his bare body. The studs that are most noticeable are on his face. 3 above each eye, representing eyebrows of a kind. 3 on either side of his nose, and 2 on his chin, directly beneath his mouth. 2 sets of 5 earrings each adorn his ears. In addition, he has 4 studs on each forearm, with scars covering his right. On his right shoulder, he had the Phantom Lord stamp. He made his presence known by using his Tetsu no Metsuryu Maho to slam Warren Rocco and nab Lasaro of Fairy Tail to the ground. He also accidentally knocked out any teammates who happened to stand in his way. A sneering grin curled his lips. He mocked, "Hey there, scum. Come get me. The Iron Dragon Slayer, Gajeel Sama, at your service." Naruto quickly realized that he would need to infuse his fists with chakra before he could seriously harm the Iron Mage, as he had previously relied on his physical prowess to punch out his opponents. "I might be trash, but I'm a man," yelled Elfman, who took the initiative and charged wildly. His right arm transformed into a scaly lizard-like arm, and he leapt high, fist curled back, ready to swing in with a punch. Gajeel only needed to turn his left arm into an iron slab to protect himself from the speed of his partial transformation and his reckless charge. "Huh. So you're Elfman," replied the Iron Dragon Slayer. By cocking his head to the right, Elfman barely avoided Gajeel's right jab with a swift Tetsuryukan. The Iron Dragon Slayer kicked out with a Tetsuryukan. Enhanced leg sweep after a left hook yielded similar results. However, Elfman easily seized the iron hardened leg, which actually made Gajeel laugh enough to say, "Not bad." Elfman smiled and said, "A man must be strong." Gajeel demanded, "Then how about this?" as iron pillars sprang from his ankles and swung indiscriminately at his allies and adversaries. The mage, who was obsessed with masculinity, was incensed. "Damn you," he growled, while observing the destruction outside. "You'd even attack your own comrades? Where do you think you're looking?" Gajeel sneered as he punched Elfman in the face with an arm enhanced by Tetsuryukan. Now bleeding from a split lip and a grazed head, Natsu's reckless charge was cut short as he charged at Gajeel with his fists burning, using his head as a springboard. Gajeel was so taken aback by the careless Fire Dragon Slayer that he actually allowed the fiery punch to land on him. The vicious blow to his jaw sent him flying across the room and colliding with the bar. Without looking back, Natsu said, "Elfman, leave me this guy to me." "Why, you little," sputtered the beast arm of Fairy Tail, furiously. "Not only do you use me like a floor mat, but now you want to take my manly one. On fight as well." With a Tetsuryukan that Natsu caught but was pushed back a few feet, Gajeel threw himself back into the fray. As he struggled to keep himself from being overtaken by the Iron Club, the pink-haired Fire Dragon Slayer growled. This guy busted up the guild and hurt Levi, Jet and Droid. His magic power suddenly flared up again, enveloping him in a reddish-orange aura of flame. Just before he hurled the iron pillar into the air, he seized the long club with a deep roar of effort that came from deep within his lungs. Gajeel retracted the Tetsuryukan as he hit a ceiling rafter, pushing himself back down towards Natsu. The hothead was ready, and he used his left hand to block Gajeel's punch before slamming his right fire fist into Gajeel's jaw, sending him flying into a wall and across the room. The explosion that followed left rubble all over his body. Grimacing, Elfman shouted, "Natsu, I'll let you have that manly battle, but in return, of course, I'll knock him good." As he crawled out of his makeshift cairn, the Iron Dragon Slayer sneered, "That didn't affect me at all. Is that all you've got, salamander?" Natsu sneered, "Doesn't look like that to me. This is just a friendly hello from one dragon to another." A tremendous tremor shook the entire hall amid a tremendous blast of magical lightning just as the two of them were ready to clash once more. The warriors of Fairy Tail were aware that their master Makarov was the one doing the harm. Their will to fight had been strengthened, and they cheered. But Erza wasn't as comforted as they were. "Be careful, she said, but the noise of the clashing magic drowned out her next words. This was the first time in a long time that Makarov Dreyar had been genuinely angry. They were celebrating Phantom Lord's transgression, utterly unaware of the repercussions. Well, his kids may be giving those brats in the ranks a much needed reprimand, but Jose Porla, the guild's master, was a different story. Jose was extremely strong because he was a wizard saint himself, and Makarov didn't want to unintentionally hurt his own kids while battling his former ally who was now his enemy. In any case, that was his justification for packing in Erza's suitcase and going with them. As his instinctive giant's wrath spell swung out to smash the walls surrounding him and break nearby windows, his magic reacted to his rage by changing into a geyser of magical firepower that shook the entire building. When he finally arrived at Jose's room, he swung around and blew the door off its hinges, and he yelled, "Jose, come out and face me." His magic swept through the room like a tidal wave as he stalked in, a man out for blood. Strangely, Jose was coolly seated in a chair that looked like a throne. "Jose, what the hell do you think you're doing?" Makarov mumbled, barely controlling his rage. "Why, hello there," Phantom Lord's master pondered, indifferently. "Long time no see, Makarov." The amount of power that Fairy Tail's master was producing did not even faze him. His tone was measured nonchalance as he pondered out loud, "It must have been 6 years since our last regular meeting, wasn't it? I was so wasted that day." Makarov was furious and at the end of his rope when he struck Jose with a huge fist, which appeared to crush him and his throne. "I'm not here to reminisce with you, Jose," growled the irate old mage. But Jose didn't have any scratches on him, and as the appearance of his presence started to fade, his appearance flickered. Makarov frowned. "So that's why I couldn't feel your presence here. You're busy sustaining this thought projection. Then you've already left the guild?" In response to Makarov's mounting rage, Jose grinned and said, "I prefer a rational victory. A battle among 2 of the 10 wizard saints of fury would cause an extraordinary cataclysm to occur." Makarov snarled, but he was unable to attribute his opponent's intelligence. "Where are you? Come and fight me, fair and square." A figure appeared at his feet, and Jose grinned. To Makarov's surprise and horror, he recognized the person. Young Lucy, one of his newest family members, was now bound and lying at Jose's feet in front of him. He started to get cold sweat on his forehead. Makarov demanded, "Why?" Jose drew a short knife and held it over Lucy's defenseless body, making her ignore his question. Makarov's instincts as a parent kicked in. "No, stop," he yelled out. Then all of a sudden he sensed someone behind him. "Oh, there's no way that we'd kill Lucy Heartfilia. Sama, now is there." Makarov was left without time to consider why Lucy's family name seemed familiar to him before Arya the Great Sky left him helpless and attacked him with a spell that sapped all of his strength. The explosion that followed created a hole in the floor that led to the dining room of the Guildhall. Jose's final words replayed in his head as he fell. "Please don't tell me that you didn't know who she was when she joined your guild, Makarov." However, a defeated Makarov Dreyar struck the Guildhall floor with significant force before he could consider Jose's final words. His impact was covered in clouds of smoke and dust as a huge crater formed beneath his prone body. Uncertain if the impossible had actually occurred, the fairy tale expedition froze. "So sorrowful, it's too sorrowful. Where does this sorrow come from? Ah, is this the sorrow due to the world losing a great mage?" a male voice cried theatrically above them. Terrified, Erza stood motionless, gazing at the prone position of her master's body. He was the most formidable fighter she had ever encountered, the rock she had yet to top, yet he was lying there vanquished. She never noticed a streak of wet warmth running down her face from her uncovered left eye because she was too preoccupied with trying to make sense of the discrepancy between reality and what she knew. The smoke and dust from the gruesome scene were abruptly cleared away by a huge explosion before her emotions could break free from her iron control. A familiar figure appeared out of the dispersing haze, and she felt ice water run down her spine. Every second that passed echoed menacingly in the hearts and minds of everyone in Phantom Lord's Guildhall. Both Fairy Tail and Phantom Lord alike, paralyzed by the dark power of his murderous intent. A vanquished Makarov was replaced by Naruto Uzumaki, the Demon King and Yellow Flash of Fairy Tail. He relaxed his tension by popping his neck and slowly looking up at the ceiling hole. He scowled when he saw Arya staring at him through the hole. His emotional turmoil caused his eyes to flash into the Chobuku Rinnegan, but his anger was suppressed by his militaristic rationality. He knelt down and collected the natural energy, gradually replenishing his reserves, resisting the urge to leap through the ceiling hole and attack Arya. I have lost more than 75% of my chakra due to that spell. I must finish this as soon as possible, he thought, letting out a sigh of relief. Everyone was taken aback by the second yellow flash's sudden appearance, with the exception of Erza, and it raised a crucial query. Where was the real Master Makarov then? Erza, dressed in her Tenrin no Yoroi and looking stunning as always, stood behind him and asked, "Are you all right, Naruto-kun?" Naruto said, mentally checking himself with a little senjutsu chakra on his body, "I'll be fine. Whatever Arya did to me seems to have inhibited my own body's natural ability to automatically use my chakra as well as draining me of it. This effect is only temporary, therefore I wouldn't need any immediate medical attention." The redhead sighed, good. She believed he might have been defeated or worse, so she said, "I'm glad that you'll be okay, Naruto-kun." A cloud of smoke was left behind when the cage Bunshin Naruto left, giving him some of his chakra back. Arya the Great Sky, meanwhile, was horrified. He didn't like the thought of their original target being found, and he hadn't anticipated that Master Jose's plan to drag Makarov out and remove him would fail in such a way. By this point, Gajeel had joined him, and he grinned at his fear. He gave a loud guffaw, saying, "Hey, looks like Master's plan backfired." The chilling tendrils of Naruto's murderous intent seemed to crawl up his legs as Arya yelled, "We must leave and inform the Master." The Iron Dragon Slayer grimaced and scowled at Naruto's barely contained bloodlust. "I don't like running away from a fight, but you're right. For once in your life." Their guildmates were left to face Fairy Tail's wrath after Arya's spell caused them to disappear in a whirlpool of wind. Naruto's muscles stiffened and his eyes widened as a crucial piece of information from a dispelled cage Bunshin suddenly filled his mind. He was so angry at himself that his desire to kill increased sharply. A few of the less powerful mages soaked themselves with fear. He said out loud, "So that was his plan," which left Erza perplexed. "Do you remember what I told you about my cage Bunshin and its abilities?" he asked, observing the redhead's bewilderment. You told me that you receive their memories when they dispel," she trailed off, quickly jumping to a startling, but reasonable, conclusion when she realized that he wouldn't have mentioned this if something significant hadn't just happened. Did something happen to the guild? He shrugged, "Actually, the guild's fine," which caused her to exhale in relief. "The problem is that one of the many clones that I left behind. You know, to guard the guild and the girls? Well, the clone saw two members of the Element Four, Aimwanana, Juvia and Saul of the land, subdue and kidnap Lucy." Erza scowled. Why would Phantom Lord start a war and go to so much trouble to get their hands on Lucy, of all people? He grunted, more irritated than anything else. Apparently, Lucy's been hiding the fact that she's the daughter of Jude Hartfilia, the business magnate. The redhead was shocked, more by this new information about Lucy than by the murderous bloodlust her teammates still casually displayed. He had somewhat calmed down, but the whole guild hall was still being swept by his power. He got to his feet, grimacing, and yelled, "Everyone stand back. I'll finish this battle in one move." "What?" cried everyone. "You heard him," Erza yelled, without repeating herself. The fairies exchanged glances before retreating, not wanting to further agitate their enigmatic Demon King or their Titania. While yelling commands, she assisted in removing the few battlefield casualties. Naruto and Erza had every right to direct them as needed because they were the group's commanders. Additionally, the remaining members of Phantom Lord were too terrified to attempt attacking their retreating opponents because of Naruto's murderous intent. He whispered in her ear, "Thank you for trusting me, Benihime-chan," which caused her to blush quite a bit. "Listen to me well, Phantom Lord. I offer you the chance to surrender peacefully," the Demon King of Fairy Tail roared, turning back to the remaining phantoms. After giggling at what he said, they charged him in an attempt to outnumber him and his fairy tale friends. Naruto let out a resigned sigh. "A pity they wouldn't take my offer." He added, shrugging despite himself, "Now, no one can blame me for what happens next." He inhaled deeply, inflating his chest and lungs to at least 3 times their normal size, and made a few fast hand seals. "Futon. Rasen Shinkugyoku," he shouted. A spiraling cannonball of compressed air was released by the futon. Rasen Shinkugyoku, a belch that struck the front lines of the approaching Phantom Lord grunts and burst into flames. The ball broke up into a tornado, tearing through the surrounding building and slicing at everything in its path. However, as swiftly as it had appeared, the squall disappeared, leaving behind dust and debris that he had kicked up. Right then and there, the most crucial thing was that the rank dot and file of Phantom Lord had been defeated, and they were left moaning and tending to various deep wounds. The demonstration of such lethal and destructive power left Erza speechless, and she wasn't the only one. All those who had remained were now aware that Naruto was more of a monster than their master, Gildarts, or even Laxus. Together, they all gulped uneasily, hoping that he would never be an enemy. Naruto let out a loud sigh and turned to face his now frightened fellow guild members. It was very hurtful that his new friends would respond in this way to a minor act of dominance. When Erza saw Naruto's dazzling blue eyes clouding with resignation, she was the first to come out of her astonishment. She recalled her personality immediately following her escape from the Tower of Heaven, before she discovered the lovely guild of Fairy Tail and her numerous amazing allies. She hoped that one day Naruto would open up to her and even the guild, trusting her enough to share everything about himself. She approached the enigmatic shinobi and gave him a shoulder pat without waiting for anyone. She did, however, have a minor grievance to voice. She remarked gravely, "I didn't know that you could use spells like that, Naruto. Why have you never used them on me?" She brandished a sword at him without even waiting for an answer. "Did you not use your spells on me because you thought I was weak? Have you been deliberately underestimating me all this time?" she asked. "Actually, I didn't mean to," he said, rubbing the back of his head uneasily in response. "I learned my kenjutsu from a samurai of my acquaintance." With a blank expression on his face, he clarified, "The samurai are a type of knight unique to my homeland. Thanks to my teacher, though, I learned about the thrill and the honor of fighting another sword fighter on equal grounds." Erza laughed, despite herself. Naruto seemed to have a silver tongue in addition to his lightning fast reflexes. No wonder he could finish a battle so quickly. The others chuckled as they recalled that she had not yet regained consciousness when he had first used his ninjutsu during his battle with Natsu some time prior. The shinobi whispered to her, "All right, Benihime-chan, can you take our people back to the guild? I'll go save Lucy-chan." "How do you intend to find her, Naruto-kun?" the redhead wondered. That was prior to her noticing his smirk, the wide, vulpine smile he had a habit of wearing when he had a clever scheme. He shrugged, his eyes sparkling mischievously. "I have my ways," he said. As she nodded, "Okay, Naruto-kun, but be careful. I know that you're more tired than you pretend to be." He grinned, not wanting to prolong their exfiltration. Erza turned back to her bewildered guildmates as he nodded to her and vanished in a swirl of leaves and dust. "Okay, I'll do that," he said. Kana inquired, "Hey, where did Naruto go?" Erza grinned a little and started organizing Fairy Tail's departure while putting on her typical Heart Crew's armor. To save a captured princess from the clutches of her evil kidnappers was her only answer. Kana and the other guild members were perplexed by her response, but they shrugged and followed Erza out, leaving Phantom Lord in their wake. Naruto had actually not gone very far. He stood atop the topmost tower of the demolished guild hall of the Phantom Lord. Now that he had activated his Chobuku Rinnegan, he was looking for Lucy in the surrounding countryside. He was shocked to discover Lucy's energy signature close by and with a powerful mage. He used a good amount of wind chakra to enhance his leap as he leapt from the guild hall roof, reaching the roof of a building in Oak Town. Her enthusiasm had taken him, after a good deal of roof hopping, to a big structure across town from the Phantom Lord Guildhall. He smirked triumphantly as he landed on the roof of the building's tower itself, realizing that Lucy was nearly directly below him. The individual with her was just as strong as Master Makarov, which caused him to scowl thoughtfully. He crawled down the building's wall and peered through a window to see Lucy strapped to a chair, his dojutsu effectively useless in this scenario. A man in an odd-looking coat was her companion. Naruto knew that this man could only be Jose Porla, the Phantom Lord Guild's master, since he was the only one with the strength of Makarov. He saw that the two of them were alone and knew that he could use his Hiraishin no Jutsu to quickly grab Lucy and return to the guild. He discovered that Lucy and Jose were discussing letting her use the restroom thanks to the strength of his Chobuku Rinnegan and the lip reading techniques Iruka Sensei had made him learn as a child. Calling out to her, he threw a metal bucket in front of her. However, a frightened Jose quickly turned away, revealing his back to the stellar spirit mage, when she actually tried to take off her underwear in front of him. He made a pretty big mistake with that act of civility. Lucy quickly kicked Jose in the groin after realizing her trick had worked, leaving him to clutch himself. Naruto winced and almost crossed his legs involuntarily as he laughed at how ridiculous it was that Lucy could fool a wizard saint with such a simple trick. He had actually been tempted to teach her some tricks because the stunt was so ninja-like. He still laughed at the thought of a novice like Lucy defeating an experienced opponent like Jose, so he deactivated his dojutsu and leapt to the building's floor to wait for her to run out. He used to pull pranks like hers on Sarutobi. GG with great success, so seeing Lucy pull a similar stunt reminded me of the good old days. To the surprise of the injured Jose Porla, Lucy had heard his laughter and immediately leapt from a guardrail on a staircase at the top of the tower. The stunning blonde exclaimed, "Naruto," as she plummeted towards certain death. Naruto squatted down deeply after looking up as she called his name. He leapt high into the air, putting a lot of chakra into his legs, and caught her as she was still falling. With a sly smile, he landed softly on the ground and held her in a bridal carry position. His question was more tongue-in cheek than anything else. "You called, Lucy Chan?" Lucy felt safer than she had in years as she blushed at the effortless intimacy of his strong, muscular arms. With tears on the verge of streaming from her stunning brown eyes, she questioned, "How did you find me so quickly, Naruto-kun?" Naruto untied her hands by having a cage bunshin cut through the rope that was fastening her wrists, not really noticing that she had altered her honorifics. "We don't have time to talk here," he muttered after himself. "We really should get back to the guild." "Hold on tight, we'll be back home in a flash," he said, adjusting his arms in the bridal carry he was still holding her in. She put her arms around his neck for support, still flushed, and Naruto concentrated on a particular jutsu Shiki before vanishing in a burst of yellow light. An enraged and vindictive Jose Porla was left behind by the two of them to plan his retaliation. The guild was giddy with laughter, discussing the fight and their triumph over one another. Their Demon King Naruto's display of unadulterated destructive power left them in awe. Having yet to replace his combat pipe with his regular cigarettes, Wakaba smiled around it and said, "I still can't believe that we defeated the Phantom Lord." Macau leaned back in his chair and grinned. He rubbed his chin in its constant 5 o'clock shadow and said, "We'd have lost if Naruto hadn't replaced Master Makarov at the last minute. How'd he do that, anyway? And where's Master, anyway?" Refilling their beer steins, Mirajane remarked, "Master is traveling to Era to meet with the Magic Council, according to Naruto-kun. He wants to head off any potential problems for the guild because we're at war with Phantom Lord." She sat down at their table and continued, "Also, this way he can prove our innocence in case the Magic Council attempts to blame us for this war." However, she failed to mention that in Era, Naruto had asked Makarov to present their case to the Magic Council, presumably to gain their approval to declare war. However, the formidable ninja ordered a preemptive, retaliatory strike after he had left town, using all of Fairy Tail's strength to catch Phantom Lord off guard. The guild as a whole adopted the rallying cry of retaliation with their typical impetuosity and headed straight for Phantom Lord's guild headquarters in Oaktown. Meanwhile, Lucy was still sobbing in a corner. She blubbered out some coherent apologies for lying to them and telling them everything about her kidnapping experience while Natsu and Happy stood watch over her. The young fire dragon slayer was so enraged that it appeared as though his flames would burst into an uncontrollable fire. "Hey, Lucy, your father's mistakes are not your fault. You've got nothing to apologize about," Naruto, who was seated next to her, abruptly said. Her eyes were red as she gazed up at him. He could see the question that she couldn't bring herself to ask aloud. "Well, you didn't ask your father to attack the guild, now did you?" he said. Naruto grinned at her when she shook her head. "See? It's not your fault. Levi, Droy, and Jet will be just fine. Plus, we attacked Phantom Lord and won. So don't cry. You're too pretty to cry all the time." She blushed as heat rose to her cheeks from his warm words and smile. Suddenly he held out a handkerchief to her. She giggled in spite of herself, taking it and wiping her tears away as he took her hand and lightly kissed her knuckles, making her blush even worse. Natsu abruptly and indiscriminately asked, "So Lucy's a princess?" ruining the moment. In his squeaky voice, Happy added, "But she doesn't look like anything like a princess." "I agree." Lucy was so embarrassed by the rest of the guild's outburst that she glared bloody daggers at the two fools who had initiated it. "Natsu, Happy," she hissed. The other members of the guild laughed even harder at the two idiots as they asked together, "What?" Then they noticed that Lucy glaring at them, her face shadowed by her hair and her eyes glowing in the exact same way that Erza would be whenever they'd done something wrong. They screamed girlishly and gulped nervously as they fled for their lives. While the rest of the guild continued to laugh at the three of them, an enraged Lucy swiftly rose from her chair and pursued them. Naruto sat down to watch free entertainment with a wan smile. Nobody there realized that the storm hadn't passed completely. Makarov, meanwhile, was snoring while he slept in a chair at the Magic Council headquarters in Erza, biding his time until his meeting with the Magic Council of Fury. He woke up and fumbled in his chair after a few snorts. He sighed to himself and turned his eyes toward his beloved guild. He knew deep down that Naruto could ride herd on the other mischievous brats he referred to as his kids. However, as a result of his upbringing, the boy lacked any true sense of self-control in combat. He moaned to himself, "I just hope that nothing bad happens to the brats before I get back. You made a promise to me, Naruto. I hope I can count on you to keep that promise." The little wizard saint was startled out of his reverie by a voice asking, "Master Makarov?" He looked up to see a frog-like figure waiting for him and said, "Yes?" At this point, the frog creature croaked, "The council will see you now." "Well, it's about time," the elderly man was complaining as he leapt from his chair. Makarov entered the meeting rooms with a stern expression and furrowed brows. He interrupted the chairman before he could introduce the meeting with the customary theatricality of the Magic Council, as he was not in the mood for a show. "Counselors, I have come here to inform you that Jose Porla's Magic Guild Phantom Lord has attacked Fairy Tail's members and damaged our guild hall," the elderly wizard saint replied bluntly. "Even now, my willful children are attacking Phantom Lord's headquarters in retaliation." Chaos broke out. The council members practically jumped out of their seats, trying to shout their questions over each other, and each of them demanded to be answered first. As he waited for all 10 members to yell themselves hoarse, Makarov appeared indifferent and even rubbed his fingernails against his shirt. "Yes, I know," he made note of. "An alarming development. To begin, we didn't start this war." The chairman of the Magic Council slumped back in his chair, sighing as he pinched the bridge of his nose in exasperation. Finally, "Very well, Makarov," he said. "Tell us what happened. In complete detail, if we are to judge you and your guild fairly." Makarov grinned. "It happened 2 nights ago. Their communications lacrima, meanwhile, came alive back at the Fairy Tail Guild Hall. When Mirajane went to respond, she was taken aback to see Laxus Drayar, grinning arrogantly as usual. With a laugh, the artificial lightning dragon slayer asked, "So where is that old codger?" She shrugged and said, "Master is at a meeting with the council in Erza." With a smile that slightly twisted his stylized lightning bolt scar, Laxus said, "I heard you guys made quite the ruckus in Oak Town." Observing airily the take, Overmage said, "Oh, we did, didn't we? You really should have been there for the fight, Laxus. As I understand, we crushed them." Laxus gave a harsh, single bark of laughter. He sneered and said, "And here I thought you guys were a bunch of good for nothing weaklings, be honest. The new guy did most of the work." Mirajane looked critically at the crystal ball. Her eyes hardened into a vicious glare that promised much pain. "Oh, my. What are you trying to say, Laxus? Are you saying that we're not strong enough?" She didn't take insults lightly. Unfazed by her rage, he laughed. "What I'm saying is that the new guy, your Yellow Flash, he's the one who defeated the entire guild, right?" Naruto surprised Mirajane and Laxus by approaching from behind and demanding, "And if I did, what's it to you?" His once bright, expressive sapphire eyes had turned into icy azure chips. Mirajane never wanted to see his adorable blue eyes harden in rage, especially at her, even though she could intimidate the other guild members into obeying her the way Erza did these days. Laxus smiled and said, "Ho, if it isn't the man himself? I'd like you to join my group, the Ragenshu." Naruto easily interrupted Laxus, causing the Lightning Dragon Slayer to frown, saying, "Thanks, but no thanks." "I see," he thought slowly, gritting his teeth for a moment. "If you don't mind my asking, why do you turn my offer down? Naruto shrugged and said, I don't like being around people who lie to themselves. His words caused Mirajane to swoon. He certainly managed to sound cool. Kana, who was close by and had heard the entire thing, thought as he looked at the full beerstein in his hand. Laxus gave a fierce sneer. He ended the transmission on his end after saying, fine. You guys clearly don't need me to come back and save your asses. Just as Naruto opened his mouth to speak, he blinked and looked off into space. He turned to Mirajane after a half-second, looking suddenly agitated. Mira-chan, where's Erza right now? Mirajane began, she's taking a bath right now, why? But Naruto interrupted. A little harshly, he yelled, get everyone ready. The guild is about to come under attack. Kana, who had heard him, gasped in surprise at what he had said. She felt a little annoyed when they turned to face her and realized that they had been unaware of her presence until that very moment. She coughed a little and demanded, is it Phantom Lord? He yelled, yeah, and made his way to the rear. Everyone, get ready. Phantom Lord will be here at any minute. Mira yelled as she turned to face the other members of the guild hall. Macau sat up in his chair and demanded, are you sure, Mira-chan? The part-time reviewer idol locked down the bar and said, I'm sure of it. Naruto.kun just told me. Shit. The Mage of Purple Flare commanded. Everyone, we're about to be attacked by Phantom Lord, he roared, turning to the other members of the guild. Chaos ensued as Fairy Tail's mages rushed to battle stations, preparing their magic power or arming themselves for battle. Erza sighed as she stretched her arms under the warm showerhead spray in the restrooms, totally unaware of the mayhem outside. She whispered to herself, I should have faced Jose, too. Naruto shouldn't have had to do that all alone. He was hurt badly and yet he smiled and acted like it was nothing. She closed her eyes and leaned her head against the wall. She could still recall what he had told her about himself. If his magic, no, didn't he call it chakra? He could die if his chakra was totally depleted. It was frightening that he had come to terms with the possibility of death, primarily because mages were not putting their lives in danger each time they engaged in magical combat. Naruto was extremely fortunate. Erza was still feeling guilty, though. She sighed and leaned her head against the wall. I should have gone with him, she said. Unwilling to consider more what-ifs, she shook her head and said, maybe he wouldn't have risked his life and health to help us fight. What would have happened if Master hadn't listened to Naruto about Phantom Lord setting a trap for us? Why did Naruto feel that he had to take on the majority of the duties? Did he not have faith in the guild? What might have made him a soldier? Where exactly could he have fought in a war, anyway? As far as she knew, there had not been a conflict in Earthland since the conclusion of the Dragon Civil War approximately 400 years prior. Was he engaged in combat overseas? Somewhere, previously unknown to her? As Erza ran her fingers through her hair, she considered trying to persuade Naruto to share himself with the other members of the guild. She recalled their most recent battle and the terms he had set for his triumph. She had previously been defeated, but not to the same extent as Naruto's casual fighting style. She didn't feel too bad about losing to him because he's pretty handsome. Perhaps she just needed a date. Surprised by such thoughts about her rival, she gasped. She gave a vigorous shake of her head, wondering how she could be thinking of her rival in that way. Yes, that's it, her opponent was Naruto. Despite the fact that Mirajane had previously been her adversary, neither of them had ever been able to win by a landslide and had instead eliminated the other on their final legs. It turns out that Gray and Natsu also had that issue. In contrast, Naruto was a completely different person. He had used swords to beat her at her own game. Yes, he would perform well. Naruto screamed outside the shower stall, Erza, are you in there? And she jumped. She called back, why yes, I'm here, what's the matter? He said, something big's coming our way. I think it might be Phantom Lord. The rest of the guild's already gearing up for war. I came back to warn you. What? Exclaimed Erza as she bounded out of the shower. She only noticed how Naruto froze up and continued to stare at her strangely, forgetting something very important in her hurry. His nose started to bleed, and he appeared to be blushing. She asked him, what's wrong, Naruto? Why is your face so red? With utter ignorance. He gave her a hazy gesture while pinching his bleeding nose shut and holding it in the air. I know you have a beautiful body, But I didn't think that you'd be so eager to show it off, he said in a nasal voice. Before turning away, Naruto couldn't help but automatically calculate and measure what he'd seen from Erza's body, cursing arrow. Senin for somehow managing to force the super pervert's ways into his head. She had a 90-centimeter bust, a 60-centimeter waist, which was made possible by the strong muscle tone concealed in her very feminine body, and a very healthy and strong set of curvy 90-centimeter hips. In order to avoid such awkward situations, he occasionally wished that he had not been Jiraiya's apprentice in more than just ninjutsu. Huh? She inquired. She immediately grabbed a towel from the area and quickly wrapped it around herself after blushing deeply and looking down at herself. She felt really weird around Naruto and didn't like not knowing why she felt that way, even though it was very unusual of her to be self-conscious about her body, especially after he had left her in her underwear and carved her armor into shrapnel every time they fought. There was an awkward silence between them, and Naruto flinched, waiting for Erza to unleash her feminine rage, which would quickly send him flying out of the bathroom. However, the earth beneath them trembled violently, causing the two of them to wobble in place before anything else could happen. Naruto became aware of what had transpired after the tremors subsided. "They're here," he breathed. "Phantom Lord's here, so hurry up. We've got a war to finish, once and for all," he said, turning back to Erza, before he fled to the bathroom door, leaving the startled redhead in his wake. She jolted out of her reverie as the ground shook again. She quickly changed into her typical Heart Cruise skirt and armor, and then she was chasing the blonde ninja. She practically skidded to a stop as she found herself looking up, tearing out the rear exit of the damaged guild hall directly behind him. Way up. The enormous object was literally approaching them from the sea, its massive metal legs and feet trembling the ground with each step, and everyone in the guild hall was now staring blankly at it. The Phantom Lord Guild symbol painted on the huge flags that flew from the walking building's towers was what truly revealed its function. To be fair, Naruto had some experience with fighting mechanisms, particularly after he had met Shizuka from Nadeshiko village and assisted her in overcoming Kokuyo and his numerous puppets, her unwanted suitor. However, a castle actually approaching them was the highlight, even after everything he had witnessed back home. The obvious was stated by Happy, who was the one who was unaware. Their guild is walking. The members of Fairy Tail were motionless as the guild machine advanced with heavy steps. Both the sight and, to a lesser degree, the folly of their enemy left them stunned and unable to speak. When Erza Scarlet saw Phantom Lord's guild hall actually approaching them, determined to destroy their cherished guild beneath its heavy metal feet, she became anxious and began to perspire. The words, "I didn't predict this," came out of nowhere. This is how they were going to attack us. Without uttering a word, Naruto scowled as he looked around the moving structure. Finding any weak points that could be destroyed or used as leverage in a counterattack accelerated the demolition training that was part of a lifetime of ninja training. His Chobuku Rinnegan came to life as his gaze swept over the enormous mechanical engineering marvel, allowing him to get a clearer view of the moving structure as it eventually came to rest, anchoring spars that were piercing the earth deeply from its toes. With a frown, he identified the structure and knew that he had to have saved Lucy from Phantom Lord's main headquarters, which was why Jose had launched the attack. He noticed some flares of magical power that were especially bright. He could see the life forces of many people in the enormous walking castle when he fixed his eyes on them. The most potent of the guild's members were 6 signals. Additionally, Naruto identified the 2 most formidable mages as being Gajeel Red Fox, the Iron Dragon Slayer, and Jose Porla, the guild master of Phantom Lord. After those 2, he quickly identified the 4 strongest signals as Element 4 of Phantom Lord. Jose wasn't playing around if he had also brought them along. He noticed a very bright flare somewhere close to the center of the guild hall. When he fixed his eyes on it, he saw that a huge crystal sphere of some sort was being formed by the forceful blending of trace signatures of fire, lightning, water, and earth with enormous amounts of power. Then, as a long dot gun was drawn to its full length, the upper portion of the ornamental arc that topped the guild's entrance folded outwards, resembling window shutters. As a ball of destructive magic formed in its mouth and began to swell with power as it tried to compress its effective power into the most effective shape and form, the cannon's tip started to glow brightly. Naruto's gaze expanded. He had witnessed a similar incident in the past, when Shino tricked Amaru into reactivating Sora no Kuni and its mounted superweapon by using the Ribi and its dark chakra. The long gun on Phantom Lord's mobile headquarters could only indicate that Jose planned to level half of Magnolia Town in the process of destroying Fairy Tail in a single blast. Before he remembered what his father had done with Kurama's Bijudama when that bastard Obito had set the nine-tailed fox to attacking Konoha the night he was born, his mind was racing with backup plans. "Everyone take cover!" Erza yelled as she dashed toward the cliff's edge, her armor glimmering. She was about to use her requip magic when she was thrown to the ground by a hand that landed on her shoulder. She leapt to her feet and glared up at the sky, prepared to strike whoever had ambushed her. She was shocked and alarmed when Naruto returned the smile, and she could sense her rage fading just as fast as it had flared. She was about to object when he formed a Cage Bunshin, who grabbed her and sped off, carrying her back to the other guildmates. "Don't worry, Erza-chan. Let me take care of this." Naruto summoned his chakra reserves and stood there popping his neck. He would soon need to release another seal if this was the way mages battled. The members of Fairy Tail gazed at him standing at the front of their line of defense as tendrils of eldritch blue flame started to envelop his body. They could sense his power building in some way, like a mage could. Erza, however, was fighting against the iron grip of the Cage Bunshin. "Let me go. Damn you. I have to protect the guild." The clone gave a feeble smile. He yelled, "Hey, the boss knows what he's doing, Benihime-chan," in an attempt to justify what was essentially his own. After struggling futilely in his unyielding hold, she nodded feebly and sagged in the clone's embrace. Naruto's willingness to give his life in order to defend the guild shocked Natsu. The fiery fire dragon slayer yelled, "I can't just go and let someone in the guild sacrifice himself for us." While the other members of the guild appeared somewhat remorseful, he stomped out to join Naruto after yelling, "I'm going out there and helping him." However, gray clothes lined him, sending his ass flying over the tea kettle. "Natsu, don't be foolish," the ice mage sorcerer yelled. "You think you can outmatch anything Naruto might cook up? All we can do is believe in him right now, trust him to come out of this alive." Lucy was crying because she was afraid of what would happen to her secret crush and favorite author. Suddenly, Phantom Lord's magic long dot gun exploded, causing the sea to split in its terrible wrath and create a trench on the exposed seafloor below. Everyone held their breath, but just as the original began a complicated series of fast-moving hand-seals, Naruto's Cage Bunshin launched something high into the air, far above the towers of the walking castle. Holding his hands out in front of him with all of his fingers spread wide and only the tips of his thumbs and index fingers touching one another, he concluded the quick sequence. As Naruto yelled, "Fuinjutsu, Jikukan Kekai." An odd-looking knife appeared to fall into the triangle formed by these fingers and actually hovered there. Only a few centimeters away from the blonde shinobi, Phantom Lord's burst of concentrated magic actually halted before the rest of Fairy Tail could speculate about the type of technique their Demon King was now employing. Sucked into a nearly imperceptible void at the center of a spider's web of seals that appeared out of thin air, the blast appeared to taper as it absorbed the full force of the Jupiter Beam's blast before silently vanishing. Erza wondered if Naruto had done something similar to absorb the enormous blast of destructive magic. He vaguely recalled these symbols from the time he had crammed a giant monster into a pocket dimension of a scroll. Everyone had to search for it when Mirajane parenthetically stated, "Era, that Cage Bunshin is gone." In the end, Alzak Connell spotted the clone high in the sky. "Guys, look," he gestured. "It's up there." As promised, Naruto's Cage Bunshin was actually plummeting from the sky, seemingly from a considerable altitude. With his hands out in front of him and another of his odd knives floating in front of them, he was imitating Naruto. Just before that great blast of destructive magical energy slammed into the housing of the long dot gun, another enormous web of seals appeared, seemingly dividing the sky. The outcome was a massive explosion that rocked the walking castle and destroyed the building's front wall. Phantom Lord's magical long dot gun was rendered permanently inoperable by the reflected beam, which also destroyed the majority of its internal parts. Jose was shocked by what he had just witnessed. In a single motion, no one had reflected his potent Jupiter cannon and then destroyed it. He screamed, "Who is this mage?" Unable to control his anger at the idea of Makarov employing yet another absurdly strong mage. Gajeel said, Haven't you heard, Master? Fairy Tail recently signed on a very powerful mage who finished over 30 job requests in a single week, all by himself. We also saw him in action when Fairy Tail hit our guild hall. The Element 4 shifted uncomfortably at that last sentence, and the Iron Dragon Slayer grinned despite himself. After all, he continued, there's a reason why he's also called the Demon King of Fairy Tail as well. Jose was shocked by what he had just witnessed. In a single motion, no one had reflected his potent Jupiter cannon and then destroyed it. He screamed, "Who is this mage?" Unable to control his anger at the idea of Makarov employing yet another absurdly strong mage. Gajeel said, "Haven't you heard, Master? Fairy Tail recently signed on a very powerful mage who finished over 30 job requests in a single week, all by himself. We also saw him in action when Fairy Tail hit our guild hall." The Element 4 shifted uncomfortably at that last sentence, and the Iron Dragon Slayer grinned despite himself. After all, he continued, there's a reason why he's also called the Demon King of Fairy Tail as well. I'm surprised that Makarov managed to snag someone so powerful. Jose grumbled. The Master of Phantom Lord was becoming agitated, a vein in his neck pulsing with anger. But why didn't any of you tell me about this earlier? I would have been able to account for him ruining my plans, he said. He was shouting, now I have to worry about this so-called Demon King, and Makarov has yet to appear. But his most formidable pawn, the Iron Dragon Slayer Gajeel Red Fox, interrupted him with a ruthless laugh. Something you find amusing? Jose snarled, tendrils of darkness wafting around his clenching fingers. Would you like to share it with us so we can laugh with you as well? Gajeel simply shrugged, unconcerned. It's just that, those fairies got someone named Demon again, when their last one was reduced to a mere waitress and model. He raised his hands and said, personally, I want to teach this demon the power of a true dragon slayer. Jose scoffed at Gajeel's arrogant grin and asked, is that so? He turned towards his minions and snapped, awake the giant. As the original fell to his hands and knees, wheezing, Naruto's clones scattered. His father hadn't designed this variant of the Jikukan Kekai as a full-blown conduit for what was essentially a bootleg Bijudama threatening to destroy a place that he had quickly come to call home. When he realized that he had become attached to the guild, he laughed. It hurt how much the members reminded him of Konoha. However, they were a distinct people with peculiarities and traits of their own. As a hot-headed, loud-mouthed, reckless little brat with far more guts and determination than was healthy for him, Natsu reminded him of himself when he had just made genin. Although Gray was calm, he had a sense of humor that Sasuke never did. He was Sasuke at heart. Despite being the complete opposite of the medical kunoichi in many aspects, Lucy somehow reminded him of Sakura. She was the normal one between them in Team 7. He sighed deeply as his chakra began to replenish its reserves, returning to full strength a bit more slowly than usual. Happy that their demonic king had spared the guild from the magic blast, the fairies were rejoicing. The battles just began. No point in celebrating until it's over. Erza. Erza moved forward to stand beside him. Shining in her armor, she said, we can't let them do that again. That blast could have endangered the townspeople as well. At that moment, the guild hall of Phantom Lords started to tremble and shake. A stone giant's shape emerged as pieces of the mechanical structure started to move. Of all people, Natsu said, oh crap. Through some sort of megaphone, Jose was gloating from the enormous bipedal monster. You should grovel and beg for forgiveness, you damn kids. What will you do now, Demon King? He didn't notice Naruto's apparent lack of interest because he was too busy laughing. He screamed triumphantly, learn your place, you insect, as his dark magic manifested as humanoid shadows. Out of the castle. Turned. Giant. These morasses poured out, overwhelming Fairy Tail with their torrential attack. Go to your positions. Begin the preparations, since that Demon King can't reflect area of effect attacks. My Abyss Break spell will finish him off, Jose yelled, turning off his speaker and addressing his Element 4. He laughed hysterically and added, if we're lucky, the blast will take the guild with it. Juvia started, but, Master, Juvia thinks that Abyss Break might wipe out the town behind the guild as well. That's excessive, Master. The addition of, we don't want to be labeled a dark guild, Master, by Gajeel was somewhat unexpected. Of Phantom Lord's Element 4, He was typically the most aggressive and gung-ho. Jose yelled, "I don't care what you think, just do as I say." To avoid their enraged master's wrath, the Element 4 fled to their designated positions. "Activate the runes," Jose shouted as he watched them go. His minions screamed, "Yes, master," and started fiddling with the controls of their enormous stone robot. Phantom Lord, meanwhile, attacked everyone in the area on the battlefield, including Mirajane, who was unprepared and simply froze in terror as memories of that day flashed through her mind. As he swiftly blasted some wind chakra for a futon, Kazekiri, she hardly noticed Naruto emerge in a flash of light in front of her, standing guard. Slicing in two, the dark things screamed and scattered into nothing with faint bursts of light. Mirajane was startled out of her reverie by the Shade's death cries and was astounded by his strong aura, which threatened to electrify her senses. His back, which towered over her like an impregnable wall, caught her attention as she studied his broad shoulders and sun-kissed blonde hair. Bewildered, the blonde demanded of the stunned mage, "Turned. Waitress, Mira-chan, what the hell are those things?" She turned her eyes to the dark creatures attacking her fellow guild members, blushing when she realized she was staring at him. Since Naruto was unable to detect or even see any life energy from these creatures, he was certain that they were not human. When he attempted to physically attack a couple of those things, he discovered that doing so depleted his chakra and some of his life energy. However, they possessed the same signature as the Master of Phantom Lord, with a dark shadow power emanating from their bodies. Shyly, the bartender said, "These shadows are called shades," avoiding his gaze and blushing. When she saw the stone giant, she gasped in surprise. "They can draw out your magic and life energy if you're not too care." He followed Mirajane's gaze, wondering what had scared her so much, and saw that the stone giant's mechanical fingers were glowing as it drew a huge design in the air. Strangely enough, the screen looked like Fuinjutsu, but it was written in a language he didn't understand. Mirajane interrupted him by pointing to the enormous, white, glowing magic array as he turned to her for an explanation. "That's the Forbidden Magic Abyss Break. It's a powerful spell fueled by the union of the four basic elements: fire, water, earth and wind. A magic array that big will obliterate the whole town of Magnolia in a wave of darkness," said Loke, of all people. Naruto took notice of that claim. His Chobuku Rinnegan flared, his eyes hardened as he scanned the building for weak spots with an analytical gaze. Then he recalled Mirajane's words. "Mira-chan, you said that the spell needed all four basic elements to work, right?" She began, "Yes, but what will that," before realizing it herself. "I see," she thought. "You're a devious little fox, aren't you?" He teased, "I live to impress, Mira." And the demon of fairy tale blushed slightly at his accustomed demeanor. "You'll have to hide Lucy. She's the reason why Phantom Lord attacked us in the first place. I'll also leave behind a couple of Cage Bunshin for added protection, but remember that they're done for after a couple of solid hits." When a few clones suddenly materialized, Mirajane nodded and they turned to face her after Naruto nodded to them. She briefly considered what she would have done to each of these clones if the situation hadn't been so dire. She pushed these twisted thoughts to the back of her mind, blushing once more. Later, she would discover their capabilities. Rather, she took Lucy's hand and escorted her back to the guild. After listening to the entire exchange, Lucy withdrew her hand from Myris. "I'm staying and fighting. I'm protecting the guild just like everyone else," Naruto said bluntly, his blue eyes hard, and the ample, breasted blonde winced under the icy gaze. "No, you're not." "But why?" Lucy asked. Mirajane questioned, "Didn't you hear what Naruto said? You're Phantom Lord's target. We're hiding you so we can protect you, so that they don't use you against us." Lucy sighed grudgingly. "I see, Erza, Natsu, Happy, Gray, Elfman. With me," shouted Naruto in the meantime. Naruto had succeeded in assembling a rudimentary schematic of Phantom Lord's repurposed headquarters as the four mages, along with Happy, surrounded him. "Erza, I want you to take care of Arya even though I'd love nothing more than a piece of him for myself. But he's the most powerful of the four of them, and I know you can crush him easily." His faith in her made Erza flush. Despite the fact that she had not yet defeated him in combat, he had recognized her as an equal. "Are right, Naruto-kun. I'll defeat him for why? I mean, for the guild." Having noticed her error, He nodded and grinned. He continued, Natsu, happy. You two handle the fire user Totemaru of the element 4. Natsu's fire dragon slayer magic will give him an advantage here. He turned to face Natsu and the floating cat Happy. Natsu was going to counter that he could manage the whole element 4 by himself, but he was abruptly silenced by a glare that was as cold as ice. Elfman and Gray knew Naruto was more terrifying than Master and Erza combined, so they weren't surprised. The obsessive nudist nodded in agreement as Naruto continued, Gray, your ice make magic will give you the best chance against Juvia the Rain Woman. Elfman, I honestly don't know that much about you or your abilities. Naruto sighed. But from what your sister told me, I have faith that you'll pull through to defeat the Earth Mage Sol quite easily. You must believe in yourself in order to win, Elfman. Elfman exclaimed, that's right, Naruto-san, with enthusiasm. Men understand men, and me being a man among men says that I won't let you down. Naruto remarked, good man. While kindly hammering Elfman's back. I'll be fighting Jose, though, so no one is to join me, understand? Erza objected, but you can't face Jose alone, instead. He's as strong as Master Makarov. Let me help you this time. Naruto gave her a smile. You know I'll be fine. I won't get caught off guard like last time. No. Exclaimed the red-headed swordswoman. After I finish off Arya, I'll be joining you and that's that. Naruto sighed, not in the mood to argue. She smiled slightly in triumph and satisfaction, but only he saw it. All right. If you're not tired or too injured from your first fight, then you can help me fight Jose. He shouted with joy, okay, guys, we don't have much time, so let's bring down that castle. They roared toward the castle, leaving Mirajane as a laughing bystander. As ambient water vapor froze in the face of Gray's power, he created an icy slide at his feet that carried Elfman with him, coasting along at an unexpected speed. In anticipation of the impending fight, Happy recklessly fired up, grabbing Natsu and gliding towards the stone monstrosity. Erza changed into her Tenrin no Yoroi and leapt for Phantom Lord headquarters, the wings of her armor flaring as she flew straight ahead of her target. Naruto vanished in a flash of lightning, leaping from the precipice and sprinting at breakneck speed in the direction of the stone giant. He actually started skating across the water, remembering an old chakra control exercise, and once again stunned his fellow guild members. Mirajane concluded that she was thrilled to have met Naruto as she grabbed Lucis' hand and sprinted back towards the guild. He was the first man to ever attract her attention and win her respect, even from her demon side. That made her wonder, though, why her demonic side was so keen to fully submit to him. She blushed as she wondered why such obedience was accompanied by such an insistent mating instinct. Because her demons were inherently domineering and generally sadistic, she had been a dominant girl with a taste for sadism prior to that day. However, ever since he had unleashed that intense killing intent and that coolly dark and evil pressure, they were quick to yield to this stranger. Her body seemed to warm itself under the boiler's heat, and the thought of such casual power made her heart skip a few beats. Was he a demon king, indeed? To be inherently in line with her own authority as a queen? The largely retired mage found that man all the more alluring because of his mystery. Jose, meanwhile, was enjoying himself immensely. He was going to blow up the obnoxious guild and go to hell with a certain obnoxious pain in his ass because of Abyss Break. He turned to the Iron Dragon Slayer and said, Gajeel, you're retrieving our main target, Lucy Heartfilia. Gajeel grumbled, but that Fire Dragon Slayer and the Demon King are on their way. But Jose interrupted him impatiently. Infuriated by his subordinate's hesitation, Jose growled, I'll deal with this so-called Demon King myself. Totemaru will take care of that dragon kid. Now go. Gajeel laughed and went to face the heiress from Heartfilia. His gut churned with his uneasiness as a strange, heavy, oppressive feeling settled into his metal-eating stomach. Why had his master's ideas suddenly made him feel so uncomfortable? Naruto reached the phantom giant first, moving at his typical pace. His eyes flew open as he swiftly located his target, focusing his senses on Jose Porla's energy signature. There you are, he thought. You didn't think that this would be easy, did you, Jose? As he turned to face Jose, the Phantom Lord Guild's little fries stood in his way. He only succeeded in infuriating them by ignoring them in the hopes of deterring them. Hey, you, why are you ignoring us? Exclaimed one of them. Naruto gave a curious blink. He shrugged, dismissing ants and insects as unimportant. Wouldn't you ignore them before your feet? He asked. You'd crush them without even looking twice. Suddenly, as though to support his assertion, a heavy, icy weight weighed down on their shoulders. The cold chill of mortality realized it was an excruciating sensation. He looked at them with a strange curiosity in his icy blue eyes, as though he was debating whether it was worth the effort to kill them. What was this creature capable of walking among them while posing as a human? As Naruto passed the more than a dozen paralyzed Phantom Lord mooks, who were now catatonic, he popped his neck from side to side. He mumbled glumly, I'm not in the mood to teach these maggots how to breathe properly. In the meantime, a furious Jose had just recovered from that odd assault that, with its sheer power, had threatened to destroy his soul. He screamed, what was that just now? A haphazard minion exclaimed, Master, it was one of the intruders. The man who stopped the Jupiter and destroyed it. Jose retorted, damn. Have all available mages go stop him, he cannot reach this place. The minion objected, but that would leave the others. I don't care. Just do it, yelled Jose, interrupting him. That put the whole facility on high alert. Happy and Natsu, meanwhile, were lost. It wasn't exactly typical of them, but there was something about Phantom Lord's mobile headquarters that made them wander aimlessly through the corridors of the fortress. Happy's voice was squeaky as he complained, Natsu, where are we going? Natsu sputtered in horror at the imagined repercussions, that Toto. Something bastard, we gotta kick his ass, or Naruto's gonna kick ours. The winged cat squeaked, clearly perspiring, seriously. How do you know that, Natsu? The fire dragon slayer with the pink hair demanded, didn't you see his cold and dark eyes? He was saying, do it or else, and he promised pain. It cried out, you're right, Natsu, I don't want to feel pain. He squeaked, let's hurry up then, and shot off in a random direction that was opposite to Natsu's. Natsu pointed ahead of his body and yelled, W. Wait, Happy. I can smell someone with fire magic this way. Happy chirped, okay, Natsu, and grabbed Natsu's back as they both fairly bounded forward at full speed. The two of them stumbled upon their target a minute later. For both Natsu and Happy, who were not models of normalcy, there was something about the man that just seemed weirdo. Phantom Lord's Element 4's Totemaru was a fascinating figure. He wore a burnt red kikogi with a thick fur collar held by netting, and the sleeves rolled up to reveal fishnet on his forearms. His attire was quite an odd combination. His appearance was finished with black pants and high boots, but what really caught the eye was the thick black line tattoo that ran across his nose and broke up at each side of his cheekbones. His black dot and white hair tied up in a samurai style topknot and the katana at his left hip were the perfect finishing touches for his outfit. If Naruto had been present, he would have asked aloud if this Totemaru character was attempting to be a samurai swordsman or a ninja, as attempting to be both was clearly not succeeding. However, Natsu simply shouted to him, are you the fire mage Totemiko? Since Naruto wasn't present. Totemaru, the flaming member of Element 4 roared back, deeply offended. That's my name. To. Maru, you retarded brat. Natsu snapped back, his fists suddenly engulfed in huge balls of fire. Whatever your name is, you're going down, he growled. Totemaru pulled out his katana and held it in front of him, his lips curling back in a sneer.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.